This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Agreed. Okay, so here's the Georgia GOP stronghold.
This ought to be near and dear to your heart.
Walk me through it.
Georgia Republican Party. The way Georgia Republicans win statewide is counties like this. These are what I would call exurban. Of course, you have the suburbs. The old suburbs of Atlanta are Cobb and Gwinnett counties. They are growing a lot. And as voting demographics and populations change, so do voting patterns, and some of that's definitely organic. And then people move as places get overcrowded or they seek more space, they move to other counties. And these are what I would call exurban counties. They're close enough to Atlanta, but they're not your traditional suburbs. What happens is these counties plus rural Georgia outvotes Atlanta. End of story. That's how Republicans in Georgia win.
Mm-hmm. And Atlanta, from living there 9 years, I know this, they have lost population in Atlanta, Atlanta proper at least, for 10 years.
Does not surprise me. But there's a way red states turn blue. And it's just like if you watch a popular TV series and it's popular like The Office, and Michael Scott leaves the office, and then things kind of flatten off, and then eventually they go down, and then it cancels. So that's what happens to a political party is they peak and then they flatten off, and then eventually people are like, we're done here. You no longer match our values. So there was a window where the right candidate probably could have won Georgia. Now, Obama couldn't pull it off with a population of a large city that's favorable to give him a pretty solid boost because he won North Carolina in 2008.
Right.
He even won Indiana in 2008, which is a really tough pull. But in Georgia, I want you to look at Forsyth and Paulding. So we have a percentage vote gain. What these bars are, this is percentage vote gain over the previous election. So the first bar in every county is 08, then 12, then 16, and then 20. Okay. So in Forsyth and Paulding, the percentage vote growth was higher for McCain than it was Trump, but that's because these counties were very small in 2008. Because from 2004 to 2008, they grew a lot as people began to move into new exurban areas. But then what you see here is the same thing I saw in the suburban Texas counties. 12 and 16, you have Romney and Trump with similar growth numbers or very close growth numbers. And that is a sign of, well, first, Romney didn't excite the base very much. He didn't get a big coalition shift so in Georgia, there was a slight uptick for black men for Donald Trump, but Southern politics is very white, very black. Now in other states, he had much bigger gains with Latino working class, and also in the Midwest, he got a lot of black male support in the Midwest. But look at the performance of Trump, the white bar in 2020. This is blowout levels. So in 3 of the 5 counties, it's a higher percentage gain than even in 2008. But in the other 2 where it's not a higher percentage, you have tremendous vote growth in raw votes, only to be caught from behind. You had an 80% Democrat gain in Forsyth County with this huge Trump boom. You had an over 70% Democrat gain in Cherokee County with a huge Trump boom. Okay, so typically,
so to put this in context, if we were, let's just take Forsyth, for example. So that first red bar is McCain. Then the next one would be who on the Republican side?
Romney.
The next one would have been
Trump 1.0.
Yeah. So, okay. So the bar close, if I don't know if you can see my little pointer, but this bar here, this was Trump, all in 2016, having a decent percentage growth, like maybe even pretty good. And he won. And then
statewide, he did very poorly. He was only 11,000 votes higher than Romney with 4 years of population growth.
But he took Georgia still.
He did by 5 points. He didn't campaign in Georgia. It was 1 month after the Billy Bush tape dropped. That was, if anything was going to sink him with suburban women, it would have been that.
Okay. And then we had this massive sort of growth in his votes in Georgia, in these counties. yet he didn't win the counties, or he didn't win. I know he didn't win Georgia in general.
Well, so he won these counties, but he won them by a lot less than he should have.
Okay. Got it.
So what's been going on in Georgia and in other states is the Trump counties are being shaved artificially from the bottom. So whether this is mail ballot fraud or electronic fraud, we've heard people talk about these machines, right?
Right.
Then you're winning. If you're supposed to win this county by 30,000 and you win it by 20,000, then there's 10,000 votes margin that you didn't make up. You're down by 12,000 margin in Georgia statewide. So if we pull the next slide up, we can show how they all work together in the red counties and in the blue counties. And so here, this is going to be an interesting one. So look at the 4 counties on the left.
Right.
We have Cuyahoga, Ohio, which is Cleveland, which is Democrat stronghold in the Midwest.
Right.
We have Bronx and Manhattan, New York, which are known Democrat strongholds. And then Cook County, Illinois, which is Metro Chicago. You have 4% growth in Cuyahoga raw votes from 2016. You have almost none in Bronx. You have 4% in Manhattan, which is the white-collar financial district of New York City. And then you have Cook County, Illinois, which is only 7%, which obviously it's a lot of votes. But the point is the percentage gain was just, 7%. Now look at the Metro Atlanta Democrat strongholds here. Fulton, DeKalb, Gwinnett, and Cobb. Gwinnett was over 45% new Democrat votes from 2016, which already had a pretty solid Clinton gain in 2016. Clinton's gain in Georgia was 104,000 votes over Obama 2012. Biden's gain was 597,000 over Clinton, with Trump gaining 373 himself when the Republicans have been stuck for 3 cycles.
Yeah, those numbers don't compute when you've got that kind of growth on Trump's side from his previous year, and then to overcome the kind of vote total growth on both sides, especially on with Biden as, you know, the most exciting candidate ever, getting this kind of growth, again, implausible.
Yeah, and I don't focus on rally sizes and polls and stuff like that. Like, this is just, there's a way Republican states get flipped, and it's when Republicans can't move anymore, when their support peaks out. Okay. And then a trend that is usually reflected in the party registration numbers available in other states, which Georgia does not register voters by party, then you can see this kind of stuff coming. But not when the Republican is blowing out the Republican strongholds. And actually, and even in these Democrat strongholds, he's up pretty solidly in terms of votes. So it's all about raw votes, you know, and these are county by county, 159 counties in Georgia, poker stacks. This is how tall your stack is. Now, if it gets cut to like that in all the red counties, then you could overwhelm it with the blue. So it took all of these votes just to get a 12,000 vote lead. And we already have 2,500 votes of evidence of double scanned ballots in Fulton County that should be off of the rolls. So the Biden lead in Georgia is really about 10,000. So wait, if the Arizona audit justifies it, then you will have a very hard time avoiding at least a localized audit in Georgia of Metro Atlanta. And the Republican Party in Georgia would probably be wise to front that.
Right.
Because Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, is absolutely corrupt in this.
Yeah, I've felt that way too. What about the governor, Kemp?
Hard to say. He doesn't seem to want to make a call to lead the charge on this. Now, there's been a lot of headbutting about Brian Kemp in this, but the senators in Georgia are the ones I like to point the spotlight at the most. Well, the former senators. David Perdue ran for U.S. Senate reelection in 2020. Yeah, and he had no real opposition to, you know, like Kelly Loeffler and Doug Collins ran on the same ticket, so they split votes up pretty hard. But David Perdue was 14,000 votes away from getting his 50% on November the 3rd. So he would have not even had to do a runoff on January 5th had there not been 14,000 fake votes, which there absolutely were. And then, of course, Loeffler, she lied to her own base about objecting to the Electoral College certification. So really, I'm glad she's gone, even though the consequences aren't very good. But they both knew what happened on November the 3rd, and neither of them made a big fuss about it, probably because they thought they'd be exempt from that on January the 5th.
Right.
So this, as we go through these, and this is why I've given you just a sampling of slides. We could totally do death by PowerPoint, but I want your audience to understand why I think this way. I don't even need them to agree with me. I just need them to understand why there are people that have not put this to bed. Okay, right. I'm not the voice of a crazy person. All right, and I think that by now I've probably established those credentials. But in Pennsylvania, so this, by the time we get done with this, we've talked about Arizona, we've talked about Georgia. We're not going to focus on Nevada. We're not going to focus on Wisconsin, but we're going to focus on Pennsylvania and Michigan. So by the time we're done with this, you can add Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Arizona to Trump's total, and you have a totally different electoral college result than you have right now. So any sane listener to your show is going to be like, wow, that's history making. Yeah. So Pennsylvania is not a liberal state, even though it has voted Democrat mostly since 1992, with the exception being 2016. Pennsylvania is a traditional working class Democrat state. It still has a 7.5% Democrat registration advantage, which is down 7% since Obama carried the state by 10 points in 2008. So in 2008, a 14.5% registration advantage for Democrats, a 10-point Obama win. And then you have the Republican Party makes up one single point. So it goes down to 13.5 points in 2012, and that reflected a 5-point move to the right in the vote. So Romney only lost Pennsylvania by just over 5 points in 2012. This had nothing to do with Romney because the Republicans lost registration too, but the Democrats lost more. But because the percentage went in favor of Republicans, Pennsylvania slid right. It's not causation, it's correlation, and it's very strong correlation.
Wow.
But going into 2016, Republicans made gains in registration in 60 of 67 counties and cut 3% off of the Democrat voter registration advantage. So this time it was Democrats losing people again, but Republicans gaining a ton of them on the voter rolls. And that flipped the state by over 6 points to the right, and it flipped Pennsylvania to the Republican column. Right. So when states advance in Republican registration or Democrat registration, the election moves in that direction.
Sure.
That is statewide, that is almost bulletproof. There are certain counties, very rarely, where you might find enough swing on the independent vote to barely push it the other way, but it's the exception, not the rule. Like I found 2012 in Seminole County, Florida. Somebody asked me for stuff about auditing Seminole County, Florida. I was like, yeah, be careful with this one. But it wasn't egregious. But this is something where in 2020, I'm looking at Pennsylvania. If I want to start with the hypothesis that, okay, what's it going to look like if Trump loses Pennsylvania from his winning column? Because he already has it in his column. What's it going to take to lose Pennsylvania? Then I'm going to expect to see that the Democrats have made gains in registration and taken that 10.5 point registration advantage and pushed it back towards 11, 12 points. Mm-hmm. Instead, what happened in the last 4 years was the Republicans made up 3 more points in registration. So they took it down to 7.5 points. And that is 242,000 net new Republican registrants and just 12,000 net new Democrat registrants. And that's what it looks like on paper.
Now, is this the state where, the pictures came out of the night of the election, or maybe the next day, they were covering the where they were counting the votes with the cardboard and all that?
That was Michigan.
That was Michigan.
Yeah. Now Pennsylvania had all kinds of issues too. But so just so people understand how big this is, these are these little silhouettes on your screen here. 21-to-1 ratio for Republicans out registering Democrats in Pennsylvania. So this suggests a significant move towards Republicans, and Trump in Pennsylvania gained about 400,000 votes.
So that's from 2016 to in those 4 years, you had a 21-to-1 ratio between newly registered Republicans and Democrats.
Yes, as a net. Yeah, in terms of net. So what happened was Trump gained 400,000 plus votes, and he surpassed Obama's 2008 vote total in Pennsylvania, which is astounding for a state that has a declining population and will lose electoral college votes. Now, of course, Biden has reversed 2 consecutive cycles of raw vote loss because this is a coalition shift. So when people that used to always vote Democrat now start voting Republican, that's a 2-for-1 swing. And once that begins, so once your 36-year-old outfielder shows up at spring training and he's lost his legs, there is no reversing that. It's not going to happen.
Sure.
All right, so now let's move to the next slide on PA, and I'm going to show people what that looks like at the county level.
So, hey guys, we're back. We had a little emergency that I had to handle, but Seth was good enough to come back to us. So we're going to continue through this journey of fraud. And let me share the screen. And there we go. Okay, take it away, Seth.
We talked about the party registration changes in Pennsylvania over the past 12 years, and it was very strong in the last 8. So the last 2 cycles, both times, 3 points movement towards Republicans and statewide registration. Here's how it manifests at the county level. So there's 67 counties in Pennsylvania. And once again, in the past 4 years, 60 of those 67 counties became more Republican in registration, meaning the trajectory is moving to the right for the next election. If you don't believe that, you can look back for 2 to 3 decades, as far back as this data is available, and you can see this in the county level and then, of course, at the final state result. Here is a sampling of 4 Pennsylvania counties. They all moved substantially more Republican in the past 4 years under Trump, really in the past 8 as Trump was coming on the scene. York County on the top left, which is one of the counties that Senator Doug Mastriano is pushing for a full forensic audit in. I have Biden about 25,000 votes heavy, so 25,000 more votes than would be regularly forecast for Biden this year in this cycle in York County. Look at the bars. So what we have here, Jeremy, you can see at the beginning of 2008, you have the Republican and Democrat vote totals, the Republicans in red, Democrats in blue. York has been Republican this entire cycle. So really since 2008, it's been Republican since 1968, actually. Okay. But we see the margin here. It was pretty narrow. It was about a 14-point Republican win in 2008 for York County. And then what happened is, and it's the same thing in all 4 of these counties, is the working classes began moving away from the Democrats. So the Democrats being the traditional working man's party, the party of the white working class. So this is Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, places like that. And they began falling away in Obama's first term. And you can see it manifest here in the 2012 election result. Obama lost a lot of votes, almost 300,000 votes down in Pennsylvania in 2012, and only won the state by 5. You can see the Democrat vote total in all 4 of these counties has plunged in 2012. But in some of them, the Republican total didn't go up much, really in all of them, because Romney did not have much appeal to the working classes. So the same trend is present in Michigan, because Pennsylvania and Michigan both trend together. We'll get into Michigan here shortly. But you can see when Trump came on the scenes, the Republican share of the vote just took off. You can see here in Luzerne County flipped and went Republican in 2016.
Yeah, right here.
Yep. Luzerne's an interesting county. Luzerne has gone to the winner of Pennsylvania in every election since 1936, regardless of party. And if it's a Republican that has carried Luzerne County since 1936, Michigan has also been in the Republican column. So
what is it about those certain counties within a state or certain states within the U.S. where it's like anytime this one is won, the whole state like is whatever that, whoever that winner is. What makes those the linchpin counties?
Because there's the biggest segment of the electorate is the working class, so the non-college white voter.
Okay.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be a white voter, because now we have a more diverse electorate, but historically. So as we've gone on, the working class is bigger, and there's working class Hispanics, working class Black, working class everybody. So Trump populism, really any sort of populism, is appealing to working classes. And that's why you see Trump with a very large share of the minority vote this year for Republican. But what this means is a county like Luzerne, it's a very heavy working class county, and a Republican strong enough to win Luzerne County, it has a strong grasp on working classes all over the map. And then you see states that are not typically Republican, at least not in the last 30 years, that are now in play, like Michigan and Wisconsin and even Minnesota. So Luzerne County shows a strong grasp on the working class. And there's another one in Pennsylvania that Trump should have won called Lackawanna County, which is where Scranton is. Of course, we have Scranton Joe.
Yeah.
And the registration numbers suggested that county would flip this year. And so did some actual polling, which I told you I'm skeptical about polling, but one of the best had Trump up by 6 before the election in Lackawanna. Wow. So Luzerne County went again to Trump this year. And of course, for the first time in 84 years, it somehow wasn't predictive in Pennsylvania. But you can see all 4 of these counties combined, that dotted blue line is the trajectory of where the Democrat output should have been this year for votes, based on a couple things. Number one, population growth is very important, because that impacts the registration roll. These counties are either down or stagnant in growth. So you're not going to see both parties boom with new votes. That's just not how this works, especially since we're in the middle of a coalition shift that's been going on for 3 cycles, where the Democrats are falling away or the working classes are falling away from the Democrats, and now that you have a Trump type on there, they're surging towards him. So
let me slow that down real quick for the audience, because that's a very great point you're making. You say there's really been no population growth in these counties.
Correct. So if we're here in Texas or in Atlanta or in any of these fast-growing counties or states or cities, you can expect what I call a horse race scenario where both parties can be expected to gain. So my numbers, even though I told you what I thought about Arizona, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I don't think it's possible for the Democrats to grow votes in Arizona. I think it certainly is based on population growth. But in states where the population growth is stagnant or down, some of my critics will say, well, I'm not accounting for age 18 population growth and up. Well, who do you think it is that leaves these Rust Belt states to move to Florida and Georgia for a job? You think it's babies, or do you think it's 19-year-olds or 22-year-olds?
Sure, yeah.
Right. So my numbers are actually more favorable to Democrats than theirs are. So you have this big gulf that continues to widen every year as working classes are surging to the Republican side with no population growth to backfill these lost Democrat voters. The people that elected Trump to the White House were two-time Obama voters in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and that is a fact.
That's amazing.
So what we have here with these 4 counties with the dotted blue line showing the proper trajectory, and I can back this up also with the registration numbers. There in Westmoreland County, you had a loss of 10,000 Democrats off the rolls and 15,000 net new Republican. Now, some of those are party switchers, but you have a devastating impact all across these counties outside of the Philly area of the Democrats are basically extinct. So the method for Pennsylvania was to make sure that there's ballots being filled up from the bottom, even though Trump will carry these counties ultimately, to make sure Philly and its surrounding counties are close enough to be able to paper out the state.
Wow.
So these are 68,000 excess Biden votes just in these 4 counties.
Yeah, beyond what would be plausible, right?
Correct. So people aren't thinking about this. They're looking at York County. It's like, well, what's the big deal? Trump won the county. But, you could have easily seen on the trajectories and the trends that Trump should have won that county by about 25,000 more votes than he did in a state where he lost it by 80,000.
Yeah. So you think all of the Trump votes with the red line going up, those are legitimate, but the Biden line going up the way that it has in a stagnant county, that's where it's just implausible, right? I mean,
the solid lines are the certified totals.
Yeah.
The dotted blue line.
I get that. Yeah. So this would indicate there's going to be those counties as well where Biden wins the county, but he probably shouldn't have. Just the lines were already closer together, so you'll get, they're going to cross over.
Erie and Northampton counties in Pennsylvania were like that.
Okay.
They were counties that Trump won in 2016, and they surged more Republican in registration in the last 4 years, signifying that Trump not only should have carried them, but it carried them even bigger in 2020. And his vote totals in those counties also suggest that he would have carried them bigger if not for the extra padding on the Biden votes.
Okay. All right. Well,
once these trends are in effect, once these coalition shifts, which is what this is former Democrats now voting Republican. This is called a coalition shift. They happen in reverse, too. You can look at Northern Virginia and Fairfax County. Trump didn't have even as many votes in Fairfax County as Bush had 16 years ago. So that's a coalition shift against Republicans.
Got it. Okay. Should we move to the last slide?
Yes. We hear Rudy Giuliani a lot of times on the shows talk about Philly and Detroit being the major leagues of election fraud. He's not wrong necessarily, but if I could get my hands on one county in Michigan to do a full forensic audit in, I would actually pick this one. This is Macomb County. Okay. Macomb is a collar county of Wayne County, which is Detroit. Macomb is the home of the Reagan Democrat. Reagan Democrats, if you're listening, you don't know what that term is. These are the people I'm talking about in Pennsylvania that are labor union, white working class Democrat, but they hunt, they drink beer, they watch football, and they want to be left alone. Okay, it's not your West Coast Democrat or your Austin, Texas Democrat. These are your working class.
Real quick, and I know this is sidebar, but I think of guys like that, and I wonder what right now is even appealing to those people about the Democratic Party and their policies. Where's the appeal?
Well, I don't know that there is any, and this is why I'm showing you these disparities in the.
Perfect. Okay, got it.
So, Macomb County is a large county, but look at the population growth. It's 3.9%. For a county of over 800,000 people, that is not substantial. So that's probably a little bit of trickle out of Wayne County, get away from Detroit, but it's mostly that and childbirth. This is not people moving here for tech jobs. This is not people flooding the area for some new industry. This is pretty much a 800,000 plus county that is all but stagnant. So the point being, you're not going to see at least any legitimate surge in voter registration. Now, voter registration rolls are a focal issue here in terms of how certain phantom voters are being added to rolls. Pennsylvania's rolls don't seem to be artificially inflated, at least not in the last 4 years. But that doesn't mean not for several decades. So Macomb County, here's what we're looking at. Same thing as we saw in Pennsylvania. Look at 2004. I actually put it back in 04 just to show you that there's some pliability here depending on who the Republican is. George Bush ran okay for a Republican with the working classes. He was fairly close in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin in his reelection. Didn't win any of them, but he was pretty close. He was real close in Wisconsin. But in 2004, Bush won this county narrowly. And then you have the big push to the left that happened everywhere in the country for Obama. And that was natural. Obama was a charismatic, once in a generation kind of candidate, very popular, 69 million votes, which was a record until this year. But Obama won this county comfortably. And then you see the bars, you see the shift in the lines. The working classes began falling away from the Democrats in his first term, and he lost 15,000 votes in this county in his reelection. He lost 4 million votes nearly nationwide in 2012. And in Michigan, he lost about 300,000 votes. So he won the state by 17, and then he won it by 9 in his reelection. So the trend was already moving towards Republicans under Romney. But look at Romney's bar in 2012. Romney didn't have much traction with working classes, so he only went up about 4,000 votes. Now, the Trump effect. It is a 1-for-1. Trump is up 32,000 votes. The Democrats are down 33,000 votes. They completely intersected and traded places. What did I called it a coalition shift.
Right.
Yep. True, because the voters that elected Trump were not white, racist, bigot evangelicals. The voters that put Trump in the White House were working class, two-time Obama voters. Fact. Trump ran weaker in several Sunbelt red states that had conservative trust issues, or they liked Ted Cruz, or he wasn't enough of a passer for them.
Right.
So there's your big shift in 2016. And once these shifts are in effect, they are heavy. This isn't to say so yes, there are some counties where Biden could potentially not lose more votes in, but when you see the gain on the Trump side is key. Trump gained a record 40,000 votes in Macomb County this year. That's the most votes ever gained in one cycle by a Republican. So going into 2020, Trump gained 8,000 more votes than he gained last time. He gained 40,000 votes. So the last time he gained 32,000 votes, it cost the Democrats 33,000 off of their column.
Right.
So a forecast for Biden in Macomb County is generous to give him 145,000 based on Trump's gains and based on the stagnant voter roll growth in Macomb County. With Trump getting 40,000 new voters, they had to have come from somewhere, and most of them certainly came from the other column. So instead of the dotted line trajectory being followed, we have the bold line. And Trump gained 40,000, but Biden gained 48,000. So Trump actually won the county with a record vote gain. He won the county by fewer votes than he won it by in 2016. That gap between the dotted line and the solid line is anywhere from 70 to 90,000 votes.
And just for myself too, because now I'm getting fuzzy on how the election works with counties. Does every vote count when that's turned into the for the state? Like in terms of like Trump still won, but that doesn't mean, okay, this is 1 point for Trump and Biden lost, no matter how close it was. Does the disparity?
Yeah, there's no electoral college within the states.
Right.
Now,
So every vote counts here.
There are two states that split electoral votes, and they're Nebraska and Maine. But
okay, so that lends a lot of weight to all of these charts you're showing me, because the closer those two dots are between the colors, man, that matters when you've got another county where Trump might have lost legitimately.
Well, so the margin in Michigan right now, or the certified victory margin for Biden in Michigan, is 154,000 votes. So if we're super generous on the Biden number here, and I don't say 90, I say 70,000 excess, then that's almost half of the gap between Trump and Biden in the state of Michigan. Just in this one county. That's how I get numbers like this. So look at the trend, look at the bend in the Biden trajectory. It's down and down 2 elections in a row because the Democrat nominees lost 300,000 votes 2 elections in a row. And the second election of that 2 elections in a row was when Trump went up by about the same number and flipped the state from 9 points down in 2012, and he won it in 2016. So Trump having a near 400,000 vote gain in the state in a gain like this in Macomb County, and then for that bend to reverse in Macomb County is not natural. in a state, in a county that is basically stagnant in growth and in the middle of a massive coalition shift. That is not natural.
Wow. Yeah, you told me on the phone through a text message. I remember I was getting a haircut and we were kind of talking about these things just through text. And I said, Seth, if you had to stand before God and all the Republican, Democrat, your personal leanings are out the window. And he said, Seth, you can come into heaven if you be honest with where you really stand right now. And if you lie even a little bit, you can't come in. I'm sending you the other place. And you said 100% Trump won the election. Now that you're showing me all this and I'm starting to get it, you're catching me up on all the things I missed. It's becoming pretty damn apparent to me too.
Yeah, I can show you states where I don't think Trump won them. And this is what people don't like. Go look at Twitter. I'm actually pretty disenchanted with Twitter, and it has nothing to do with the nasty comments. It has everything to do with suppression and driving algorithms to make sure that the squeaky, angry leftists get their voices out there and you don't. But these numbers can be disproved if they really want to disprove them, or they can be attempted to be disproved, but it's going to take a full forensic audit. And the fact that you have President Biden going to Pennsylvania, where he won by 80,000 votes, which is 2,000 votes more than Trump carried Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin combined by in 2016, says a lot to me.
Yeah.
Hey, so I am also very lenient with my numbers. This doesn't account for what could have been stored up in these counties for decades. Here's another good question. Here's a great question. How come Clinton didn't call for a full forensic audit of Michigan in 2016, or Pennsylvania or Wisconsin, which she lost narrowly?
They believe the results, I guess.
No, maybe because there's been some stuff baked up in those counties for 30 years.
Okay. Yeah.
My guess.
Yeah, I guess so. The audit would have shown more corruption than they were willing to expose.
Yep. So nobody can explain this. So they can attack. General Flynn and I have an article out. I think you should link it in your video.
Yeah, I will.
Right, and it's not. I mean, it's not opinion. I certainly have opinions.
Sure.
But I can call the baby ugly if I need to. I didn't act like this in 2012 when Obama was reelected.
Yeah.
Obama won all the bellwether states. He won all the bellwether counties. He won.
Right.
But with this, all the trends, indicators, and bellwethers, we've had some of them going as far back as 1892. Before the modern foundation of the game that we love been attacked.
Right.
3 years before the babe was born.
That's amazing. There's a lot of stats here to back up everything you're saying. So couple quick questions for you, and give me your quick spot answer on these. So within the realm of possibility, Seth, so I'm not saying stuff that's practical, but within what's, could happen, even a little bit crazy, but it could happen. What is the best possible outcome that could happen from all of your work?
Transparency in elections is what we need. Of course, we have opinions on what we wish would happen politically. We want the right winners seated. Okay, I have been willing for 9 months to accept a President Biden.
Right.
I may not like it, but that is the rules.
Right.
But because of the statistics I'm showing you, the trends, bellwethers, and indicators, then I feel like it's a poker game where you need to put the cards on the table. In fact, the best way to shut up everybody who's skeptical about the results of the election is to reveal the fact that you won fair and square. Because not only would it legitimize your entire administration, it would put wind in your sails. It would also make everybody that opposes this or shows numbers like this out to be fools. So I'm waiting to be made into a fool is what I'm telling you.
Right. No, I get it 100%. And I'd like to see somebody try. I really would. What about within so there was one thing you didn't mention. And I'm wondering if this is within the realm of possibility. I think a lot of others are too. If it came out just full bore, this is the truth. Is there any chance that Biden could be unseated as president?
You ought to have Professor Clements on your show. If you've been keeping up with my Telegram, you've probably seen David Clements, and he's a legal mind. I'm not a legal mind. Okay. I am bearish about almost everything, and that's just the nature of an intelligence officer. We have to be that way. But look, so should the right person be seated? Absolutely. Will the courts do the right thing? They've already shown you that they're not willing to take a hard yes over an easy wrong. But I will say this to everybody, is that everything in history was once unprecedented. So I will not say no to anything, because it's very obvious to me based on President Trump's press releases that pending results of audits, he plans to legally challenge things in an unprecedented way. So is it impossible? No. Is it likely? Well, that's up to anybody's guess.
Yeah. Hopefully the courts will take it serious, look at it, give it its fair shake, fair day in court.
But if it's shown out in public in plain sight, it will be a nation altering event, regardless of what happens with the office of the presidency for the next 3.5 years. It will be a nation altering event with no precedent.
I believe that. And I believe if what comes out of these audits and what comes out of your work is shown publicly, to me, I was about to ask you, but I'm going to give my take on this. Within the realm of possibility, what's the worst thing that could happen? I think it's for all of it to come out, which is a good thing, but the mainstream media and the courts and everybody just to kind of continue to do this and suppress big tech, not looking at it, and just everybody, not everybody, but the left pretending that it never happened and just going on. I think that could possibly lead to bloodshed. It could lead to civil war because you're going to have a lot of people that say, wait, this is our federal election and you're just ignoring this. We cannot let this stand. What do you think?
God forbid we have violence in our country. But the cycle of history is that nation states must trust their system of government. This system of government, this Constitution has been around a long time. We are at a late age for a republic. So we've been under this Constitution for a long time. So I heard Ted Cruz's father speak recently about that. I mean, we have a very long-standing tradition, a long-standing Constitution. But people are losing trust in the institution of government. And this has to be restored. So some people will say, what's the worst thing that could happen? Is the worst thing that could happen? You're wrong. Actually, no, that would be a selfish way for me to look at this, because the goal, as much as I respect President Trump and his accomplishments, the goal is that we have legitimate elections in our country. Okay. And the fact that so many people are afraid to voice these things, to show the information and to air it all out speaks volumes about where we are as a nation. Okay, so we're either going to pass down a legitimate system of government, or eventually, maybe not 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now, but the republic will dissolve. And that is grounded in historical documentation.
Gosh, and that's fodder for a whole other interview right there.
Millennia, yes.
Is there a Democrat left-leaning analyst out there who is honest enough that you know of that would take a look at all of this stuff and be willing to weigh in and say, hey, fair is fair, cheating is cheating. I want to stand by what's fair and put their weight and muscle behind what you're doing?
Anybody that's aligned with the party, no. But there are people that are not right of center. They're left of center who smell this. There are Bernie people that understand it. And there's also, just the other day in Houston, there was a Democrat operative that blew the lid off of a bunch of election fraud they've been doing in Harris County. Harris County, of course, houses Houston. Houston is now the third largest city in the United States, behind New York and Los Angeles. So you have the potential with all those people to create all sorts of electoral issues, if not statewide, at least local representation. Because 2 years ago in the midterms, 2.5 years ago, they swept out all of the offices, including the judges. So they are definitely making headway in all the offices like this. So if you have massive fraud being perpetrated in the third largest city in the U.S., which of course sounds natural to me, then you have the seventh largest city in the United States, which is San Antonio. You got number 5, which is Dallas. What else can be done? And this is just one state. So there are some people out there that are honest, but they absolutely have the suppression going on to where they don't want to make an issue of it, maybe because they benefit from it. Yeah,
the muzzle order from over their heads, I'm sure, as well.
Right. So this is something that I encourage everybody on your audience, instead of getting mad about it, look up the numbers, look up the trends. There are states, if you follow my channel, there's states that everybody on my feed says, I need you to say Trump won this state. And I'm like, look, I don't have the numbers to show you that. I don't see that as possible. This doesn't mean that the state's clean, but this is not a state that is trending towards that worldview. And that's just a fact.
And that speaks to the integrity of what you're doing. Well, speaking of following you on Telegram and following you elsewhere, what's next on the plate for Captain K? What are you doing next? Where are you going next?
I have a bunch of speaking engagements coming up. I'm going to be in Snohomish, Washington on August the 15th. Snohomish, Washington. Yep, which is not far from Seattle.
Okay.
And I'll be speaking in Arlington, Texas on August 18th. And I've got a number of other other opportunities out there too. I publish those on my Telegram. Sometimes they're moving targets. We've had to reschedule a few things just based on other stuff that comes up.
And so far,
But
you've been in 38, 39 states, right?
I've been to 34 states this year so far, but I've been to 49 lifetime. I'm still missing Hawaii.
All right.
I'm waiting on somebody out there in Hawaii to invite me out there, but I'm not eating my own expenses that time.
Sure. I hear you, man. Well, guys, thank you for joining us today. Seth, thank you so much for coming on, man. You've really developed a platform, and you're doing it in a respectable way that takes the hard grunt work. And working with guys like General Flynn and Sidney Powell, it carries a lot of weight, man. So I really appreciate what you're doing out there for all of us, just wanting to keep the Republic alive.
Absolutely. Jeremy, I really appreciate your platform as well. I think a lot of folks are going to really appreciate your action-oriented approach on life, your solutions-focused approach on life. And obviously, you're not just a political show. You know, you're a life platform. So
thank you. And I'll tell you, with politics right now being how it is, it's kind of like you got to turn off the other things to get this right. Because I think Charles Krauthammer once said, if you get your politics wrong, there ain't no baseball anymore. There's the good things we enjoy in life are going to be gone anyway.
Absolutely.
So I think we've got to get this stuff nailed down.
Yeah. And I'd encourage anybody sitting there on the fence and you're a little bothered about how things are going to understand your pension and your retirement is going to be worthless if this country collapses into a chaos. So you need to get busy getting involved at your local levels if this is something you care about, and you should care about it because it cares about you.
That's right, man. Agreed. Well, Seth, thanks again, man. And I look forward to seeing you next time.
You bet, Jeremy. Thank you for everything.
All right, buddy. Yeah, thank you.